So, today is International Women's Day. It's also the day of my son's birthday party, his eighth birthday party. So, we're at the end of the day now, and I'm pretty bagged, but he's happy as a clam, and that makes me happy. But I wanted to make a quick video to make an important mention of the marginalized portion of an already marginalized group of people on the autism spectrum. There's particular challenges, especially for those who are insidiously on the autism spectrum, strong verbally, and are what people consider very high functioning, quote unquote, or formerly Asperger's syndrome. There is no more Asperger's syndrome now, it's all autism spectrum condition. But a little summary of a lot of the things that I've been saying since I started my blog, A Girl Outside the Box, and the YouTube channel about women who are insidiously autistic way too often go unrecognized to the point that it's extremely detrimental. Psychiatry continuously fails little girls on the spectrum, and the diagnostic criteria, first of all, isn't evolved for kids who are, more socially motivated and more highly verbal and tend to cope, and adults especially who have been coping for a long time, and therefore it's very masked. The diagnostic criteria is very rigid, and women are especially affected by this because the female brain tends to further mask the autism because the female brain is wired for sociability and nurturing and whatnot. The female coping with the autism is different to the way that men cope, and therefore we present differently, very differently often. So girls with autism often know that they're different from a very young age and tend to develop a special interest in observing human behavior. Girls also just feel that pressure, that societal pressure to sort of be nurturing and be more social and have the expressions and the scripted responses, and we really take that in, and we try very hard to live up to this. And this is the very thing that causes a lot of the issues for females, which is why females don't act out in school as much as the boys do, and they seem so well behaved early on. But as the pressure builds internally and life becomes more complicated, as she matures, she may hit a wall, especially during puberty, and it may present in ways that get erroneously misdiagnosed as mood disorder and even personality disorder and whatnot, which is really unfair because it's just a social challenge, and it causes interpersonal challenges, and if a girl with autism has had bad experiences with rejection, she may react. The two most common misdiagnoses for young women who are presenting with issues that are actually at the core related to autism are bipolar disorder, rapid cycle, and borderline personality disorder. The latter one is particularly unfair because it's very stigmatizing, and it often, denotes selfishness and that a person is difficult, self-centered, egocentric, abusive. And we're none of those things, really. We were reacting and cracking under the pressure after a while, So it's really unfair because I went through that and I was cracking under pressure and I wasn't treated very well at all. In fact, psychiatry pretty much failed me, and I survived that. And then later on, my son turned out to be autistic, and then I looked back on everything and I went, oh my gosh, I mean, I was Asperger's syndrome. I mean, that's why I was so different in my childhood. That's why I was bullied. That's why I needed to change who I was and become cool and pretty and, mold myself after a while. I started out as a real geek, and an outcast. Because I was socially motivated, they never really attributed it to autism, even though they didn't see that when I would come home, I would totally shut down. And even though I tried to be socially motivated, I would often rub people the wrong way, and then they didn't want to be my friend, right? The real danger with not diagnosing girls is that it's just unsafe. And it happens all too often, which is why there are so many women out there, and it's wrenching to think about how many women are in abusive relationships or dealing with drug and alcohol issues and stuff that are probably on the autism spectrum, and are just, not not coming from good families or, you know, good socioeconomic security, and are struggling because they have this inherent circumstantial disability that they can't help, but because they've developed the skills to pass as neurotypical, the true problem is not getting recognized. And it's just so sad to think about how many women are in that position. I was in that position, and I have health issues today, like big time. I know I don't look like I do because it's like invisible, mostly invisible stuff, and I wear makeup, so you don't know what I look like without makeup. You don't want to know sometimes. But I mean, and I don't always wear makeup. I just, today was birthday party. There's this video that just had me in tears, bawling. It was talking about the feelings of girls with Asperger's syndrome, and at the end, it said sometimes these girls become so good at covering up and masking that they fall under the radar. And it's not just sometimes, it's a lot, all the time. And at the end, they showed this image of this girl who had all these lashes on her, and her body was just withered, and she was like on this like torture rack kind of thing. And I was like, man, that's how I ended up inside. Like after I stopped self-medicating and then got healthy and then got hit with like fibromyalgia and then realized that, you know, all this time I had been dealing with Asperger's syndrome. I mean, it just, that picture rang so true to me that I can't describe how I feel when I watch the end of that video. So I'll put that link in here because I think it's a really great video and it's really important. It's just unsafe. Clinicians, for the sake of so many women out there and so many little girls that can be saved from suffering in the first place, the precedents need to change in a paradigm, and the diagnostic criteria needs to be looked at in the way of a complete paradigm shift. And, you know, it's not just the presenting differently. It's like Rudy Simone said it. Rudy Simone is the author of Aspergirls. It's not as much that we present differently, it's also that we're perceived differently because the way we cope is a little different, and people are so accustomed to the male presentation that when they see a girl presenting with a difference, they jump to judgments before thinking, oh, maybe she's on the autism spectrum. You know, they're jumping to judgments that she's difficult or hyper or manic or bitchy or, you know, different things, right? It's important to note that autistic people deal with sensory issues and sensory integration, sensory processing. Like, for example, you know, like if I might, you know, if there's like a tight band around my waist and my pants are bugging me or something, and I might not like notice right away if I'm dealing with too many other things or having to think about too many other things. I might start to get kind of like in a crabby mood and seem like I just feel like I want to snap at people and whatever, and then I go, oh geez, the elastic band is making a mark on my waist here. I better, you know, change into something more comfortable. You know, like something like that. Sensory integration. And then sensory issues are just, you know, people have different sensory issues like touch, so tactile, lights, visual processing. So like in a busy situation, it might be overstimulating. Sound, like loud noises, all this kind of thing. Sensory issues. You know, women tend to react to their sensory issues more emotionally, which is very female. You know, moody. So that would produce the mood disorder assumption. It might be sensory and executive functioning and overload, overstimulation, too many new things happening, too many things going on in a day, and then you know, the next thing you know, she's bursting into tears, and then somebody's like, "Were you bipolar?" You know, whatever, or going into a shutdown because you know, for a couple of days, and then people think she's in some sort of major depressive episode, and it's just sort of a shutdown. There's meltdowns and shutdowns, and I can see why those things could look like a mood disorder, or a borderline. I don't know, borderline is both apparently a mood disorder and an apparent personality disorder. I'd like to think of it more as a mood disorder, but I just think it's a silly, stigmatizing, overly diagnosed condition. I also think that it's borderline is a spectrum. You know, somebody might be like very borderline and like be in denial and really classically, and then some people might just have some features because they have other issues, trauma or Asperger's, or whatever. Really, when I thought about it though, it's like, well, I appeared borderline because I was trying to be on a borderline. I was autistic. I was trying to be neurotypical, so I was dancing on this borderline, and I'm like, well, it made me act like a borderline. Like, I mean, I don't know how to, but in a way, it's that if you think about that literally, it's somewhat true. But regardless, the misdiagnoses can be so detrimental because if you're missing such a crucial piece of the picture, there's not much of a chance that it's going to be fully helpful to the person. It might even be harmful. The person who's autistic and is experiencing causative behaviors because they're autistic and they're traumatized because been going undiagnosed, they may not be able to respond to conventional therapy for a borderline or a bipolar. That's only going to deal with the surface symptom. And it's just like, it's not going to work, Back to the safety issue. I mean, women with autism are so vulnerable, because we're socially naive, and autistic people tend to be very like trusting and good at the core and altruistic and want to make people happy. They've been made to feel bad and ashamed a lot of the time for seeming like they were maybe selfish as children, for going on one topic or seeming to have a narrow focus. Without that autism diagnosis there to protect, those things are attributed to a personality problem. So we might feel really bad about ourselves, and so we might sort of doormat ourselves. And women do this a lot because there's so much expected of women, and Aspie girls are very hard on themselves. They know when they're failing to be up to par. They feel like they're constantly trying to live up, and they're just sort of not always making it. And that stuff is just rough on the self-esteem after a while. Women with autism can develop all these mood issues. Also, eating disorder is another one that can be quite common. Women that are going undiagnosed can often be dealing with anorexia, particularly. There's a study that showed that. And that makes sense because women with autism tend to develop neuroses and obsession and that type of thing, so they could divert their pain inside and their need to sort of live up to par. They could definitely easily divert that into food and calories. Up until just a few years ago, when some trailblazers started working on this for the sake of the Aspergian woman, people just thought of men when they thought of Asperger's syndrome. They didn't think about, women with Asperger's syndrome. It was almost just not even a thought. I certainly didn't think, when I discovered, like, I didn't think about it really. I thought, okay, I asked myself that question once when I was 9 and once when I was a teenager. Could I be Asperger's? And then I looked at description, and some of it fit me, but a lot of it was very male oriented, so I didn't relate with a lot of it. And I thought, no, maybe not, But then after my son was diagnosed, and then I knew my husband was Asperger in a more typical male way, I realized, well, I thought first, I'm so much like my husband's mom, and my husband's mom is definitely an Asperger girl, like big time. We're so much alike that it's eerie. And, I know he sees a lot of the traits, and he and his mother are very close, and he sees a lot of traits in her and I, even though she and I have had very different backgrounds and different lives. There's just some eerie, similarities about us. And, I thought, she Asperger, like, Nelson, like my husband, right? And then I thought, well, if she is, then I am, And then I Googled female Asperger's, and Rudy Simone's list came up, and man, thank you, Rudy. She was the first. She saved my life, honestly. I read this chart, and I just felt like, has somebody been following me? This is me. This is me. I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my God, this is what's been going on with me. So, I mean, I knew it then. It took me 2 years from that point to get a diagnosis. Oof, I'm getting emotional. And that's because I had to fight the ignorance. I had to try and educate these clinicians who didn't want to hear it. I did research, and I mean, I brought Tony Atwood's. Dr. Tony Atwood is an expert. You should definitely look up his website. He's got some amazing information on females. His article brought me to tears too. I mean, his articles, when that line where he put she perceive she she feels as though she's hiding a dark secret, like she's hiding her true self, which she can't reveal to anyone because she perceives it to be defective. Oh man, okay, not getting emotional. But I mean, these people are trailblazers. And Tanya Marshall, as a psychologist in Australia just brought out her book, and I will include that link as well. She's really working hard to help the female autistic young girls, especially trying to get the diagnosis young so that we can save little girls from a lot of the pain and suffering that we go through. I mean, we go through immense pain and suffering, develop mental health issues, eating disorder, abusive relationships. We're very prone to abusive relationships, even by our own parents. It starts with sometimes with the parents, and it continues to boyfriends and even just friends and whatnot. Um, a lot of autistics are prone to abusive relationships, but particularly women, and the like drug and alcohol issues, particularly alcohol because it's legal, and Aspies tend to go more for things that they can sort of legally obtain because we don't want to like break rules often, not always. There's some Aspies have drug issues. Alcohol was always my crutch to deal with my overload and my social anxiety and my emotional pain and my fear of, did I say the right thing, and did that person like me? Those thoughts swimming in my head, I would want to drown them out with a drink, with a few nightcaps, right? Until it was just blackness. Yeah, so I mean, but I think I've been dancing around this, but I'd like to say that the most serious safety issue of all, I think, well, they're all serious, but a very serious safety issue that doesn't always get brought up is sexual abuse and sexual assault. I mean, we're at huge risk when we're teenagers, huge risk, because we hit puberty and we get like sexually curious, and Aspie girls will often be an open book with their emotions a little bit. So if they're feeling sexually curious, they'll sort of wear it, and you can imagine that creeps will pick up on that, and like a Lolita kind of effect, and just go after it. And like really, a lot of Aspie women young girls get very hurt that way. And I think for this reason, getting her diagnosis at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old is just crucial, because otherwise, that's a thing. If I could say one thing to psychiatrists out there that are trying to be closed-minded and deny Asperger's syndrome, and not see it particularly in girls, whether it's to save money or for whatever reason it is, I would say, look, buddy, if you don't open your mind right now and listen and observe with an open mind to this kid here that's having these struggles, and you don't identify her as somebody who's at risk because she has a pervasive developmental condition, you're setting her up for a hugely increased chance of being sexually assaulted in her adolescence, okay? So you can just think about that one, and then you can decide whether you want to, deny a diagnosis. So for me, that's, if I could say like one thing to psychiatrists, psychiatric clinicians that are sort of trying to deny the autism spectrum condition in highly verbal, kids. That's what I'd say about the girls, is that it's really unsafe. It's just not safe. I mean, because I wasn't red flagged, I had an extremely painful adolescence, and I was very hurt. I won't stop speaking out, because if I can, with my work and what I do, prevent people from getting hurt, particularly young girls and women, 50 people or 50,000 people, if I could even just prevent people from getting hurt, then that makes me feel like my getting hurt wasn't in vain, because I speak about these things straight from the horse's mouth, and I try not to get too emotional, because if I do, I'll just get overtaken by it and not be able to speak anymore. I mean it when I say that recognizing women on the autism spectrum is extremely crucial, and the sexism and bias and the denial and the closed-mindedness really needs to stop. So in lieu of International Women's Day, I really hope that not just autistic people, but many people, women from all walks of life right now, you know, we're being honored today. We need other women to help women on the spectrum. And just imagine that it's your daughter, your younger sister. Just think about that and support us. Just support us and help spread awareness. I'm going to include links in here, information about female autism. It'd be great if people would take a look at that information, educate yourselves, and share that around with your social networks. Thanks very much, and happy International Women's Day. Love and light.